Welcome, everyone. This is The Living Room, a now bi-monthly session for conversation and information sharing on topics related to sustainable jewelry practices. We cover a variety of topics, from practical tools that can be implemented in your jewelry practice to in-depth learning about artisanal mining, for example. Today, we're going to be discussing the story of artisanal miners and jewelers in the Chocó region of Colombia, and talking about the making of an upcoming documentary on this topic titled Manos Que Hablan, Talking Hands. As always, we'll have a blog post summary and a recording available on our website. I'm Ana Brazeitite. I'm the Education Director for Christina T. Miller Sustainable Jewelry Consulting. And I'm really glad to be here with all of you, along with my teammates, Christina Miller, our founder and lead consultant, and Cecilia, our Director of Outreach and Operations. Through our services at CMC, we work together to provide strategy, guidance, and education on responsible sourcing and sustainability for the jewelry industry. You can find out more at christinatmiller.com, and you can always reach out to us with questions or suggestions. We love hearing from all of you. We want to say a big thank you to those of you who've been able to contribute to making these sessions happen through the Pay What You Want option on our website, as well as to everyone here for showing up for this conversation or even listening to it down the road. Some quick housekeeping. This conversation is being recorded and it will be in the public realm. So we encourage your participation through the chat, and we may read some questions or comments out loud. For the best sound quality for the recording, please make sure your microphone is on mute. And remember, this is a kind community space, so please be respectful of everyone's privacy and personal space if you're using the chat. Our next living room will be on May 19th. Please sign up for our newsletter to receive a reminder about that, as well as the takeaways from this session. And you'll find the link in the chat or in the caption below if you're watching this later. Now I'll hand it over to Christina to start our conversation.
Hi, this is such a pleasure to be able to, in some ways, welcome back this conversation. We've had a couple of conversations in the past about the region of Chocó and the unique relationship between miners and jewelers there. So this is a bit of a through line of conversation, and we're quite honored to have three people who worked together, supported the making of the film, and Camilo's incredible work to pull it together. So please allow me to welcome Camilo Gómez Durán. He's a filmmaker, an anthropologist, an activist, and the maker of the film Manos Que Hablan. And he, in this film, is looking at the cultural legacy of mining and jewelry in Chocó. We have Juana Méndez with us. Some of you have been joining the living rooms since we started them, might remember Juana. She is a jeweler, she is an author, she's an economist, and she's been studying the traditional jewelry of the Colombian Pacific Coast, which is made and used by Afro-Colombian communities. It has its roots in the traditions and practices brought to the region by people who had been enslaved for mining purposes. And joining us, a voice that you also might be familiar with, María Sierra. She is the founder and designer at Moda Elan, which we'll hear a little bit more about later, and has been critical to this whole project and continuing the legacy of the jewelers. So welcome back. We have a few links to share if you want to kind of dig back in past living room sessions, to refresh your memory of kind of where this all started. But let's learn more about their collaboration, the film, and new opportunities to support the protagonists of the film. Cecilia's gonna.
Thank you, Christina. So we are thrilled to have you three here. Muchas gracias por su tiempo. Camilo, to start off with you before we see the trailer, just a couple of questions. So maybe tell us a little bit about how the idea for the film was born, what inspired it, and how you all connected.
Sure. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. I'm very pleased and proud that we are having the attention that this documentary, I believe, deserves. And yes, I would like to talk as a brief presentation. I was finishing my master's degree in documentary media at the Toronto Metropolitan University. And I spoke to Juanita and I told her, well, my degree is ready. I want to do my first, to work on my first feature documentary. So she told me that she was working on the Chocó region with the jewelers and the culture of gold and mining. And then I said to her, well, I would love to work on that project. And then we agreed, and she was generous to give me the list of contacts of all the people she had worked with in her research for the book, Somos Hijos del Oro, We Are the Children of Gold. And then I just landed in Quibdó, for me, terra incognita. And then I started to do some calls, some cold calls to jewelers and to people who were actors in the scene that Juanita had created in terms of her research work. And that's how I started. So I just went to one jeweler, I started to interview, then that jeweler connected me to the next, or I was making cold calls from the list that Juanita gave me, and that was it. That's how I started. I did 5 trips to the region. In total, I was there for 2 months. I recorded about 60 hours of footage, and the documentary is 70 minutes. So it's more or less like 60 to 1 footage. How do you call it? The recorded proportion of the footage is 60 to 1, 60 hours of footage gathered, 1 that was edited. In total, I have 8.5 terabytes of footage in 4K. And for the documentary, just to be brief, 1,268 cuts. I interviewed 73 people in the documentary, 55 people appear. And the documentary is, it's divided in 11 chapters or intertitles. So that's how the documentary started. And then I met, of course, María Sierra with Juanita's contact. And we just came to become a team for this enterprise of trying to give voice to the jewelers of Chocó and to the miners of Chocó.
That's amazing, Camilo. And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced while you were doing the documentary?
Well, I would say that the biggest challenges had to do with the editing. I really enjoyed the whole pre-production and production of it. People in Chocó are extremely generous and beautiful, and they are so open-minded. They just give you what they have, and they do it in a very generous way. So I had no trouble in the production phase at all. I was working with my own resources. Some friends came to help, and then we produced the music also with the help of Juanita. And it was amazing to make these 5 trips. Then Satena, which is a Colombian airline to territories, also came to the help. Alliance for Responsible Mining, also an NGO working here in Colombia, also came to the help. But then I faced myself with a humongous work which entailed to catalog, to log that 60 hours of footage, and to start editing. to do the montage. I was fearful there. Then I was thrown aback and I said, oh my God, what did I do? I have 60 hours of material and I don't know what to do with it, because it entails a couple of years of time of editing. So I didn't have the time, I didn't have the means anymore. So I went back to Canada and started working. When I go to Canada, I had taken a course for driving semi-trailers. So I started to do that again to gather some money. And I started to apply to the Canada Arts Council for a grant for the post-production. And fortunately, with the help of two friends that helped me to put that together, we got the grant. But still, it was huge work. So I contracted some people. They helped me to log. For a year, we were logging material. And then I was still thrown aback. I couldn't start. I couldn't put myself together. So I just started by doing the credits. So I was so fearful to face the narrative, to start to start the story, how to start to tell that story. So I didn't have really an idea of how to do it. The trailer, which was done during pandemics, I put together the trailer. So I started from there. But first of all, I did the credits because I was not being courageous enough to take the construction of the story yet. So it took me another year to do that. And,
wow.
And the challenge there is to be there, to just not quit, just to keep on working on it. And finally, with the encouragement of Juanita and from Anna, I was able to finish it.
Yeah, it must have been a daunting task, like Christina was saying. Of course, there's an activism thread along most of your work, and particularly in this documentary. Tell us a little bit before we see the trailer, like the anthropology background, and how does it inform the way that you approach your work?
Well, I would say that when I go back and forth from Canada to Colombia, I have a dual citizenship. And when I sort of did study anthropology in Canada as a second BA, that made me realize that, anthropology and humanities in general is it's a field of studies that really gives you sort of ethics. It sort of reminds you of the commitment we all should have in terms of keeping this world going and maybe safe, which every day we see it's becoming difficult to keep that way. But then we have to put our grain of sand. So I started to do some activist photography. I did a lot of projects with the help of a friend. And then I was always dreaming of becoming a filmmaker. So again, when I finished my studies in anthropology in Montreal, in the Concordia University, it's regarded as one of the most progressive universities in North America. I would be in the classroom, and sometimes the teacher would be sort of giving his speech, and I would say, oh my God, police are gonna come in and take this guy away. So I was very happy to be in one of these very progressive universities, very much feminist, and a lot of courses in feminism, in gender studies. So that really opened my mind to a whole new world of how to see and interpret the world.
That's awesome. I think you'll find a lot of kinship in this community. We're all pretty progressive as well, of course. So Camilo, you think we can share the trailer now and then we can get into how you all sort of integrate with Juana and Maria and yourself and the trailer?
Sure, sure. So I'm going to share a screen now.
Please do. Thank you.
Please let me know if it runs well. And here we go.
If you can increase the volume a little bit, Camilo.
El oro limpio que nosotros pues acá hablamos, el oro limpio, entiendo de que el oro limpio es el cual el minero lo saca con su batea, empíricamente con su bateíta, el que le decimos acá el barequero. Ya ahora están utilizando la maquinaria pesada para sacar el oro en cantidad, y ahí es donde tienen que echarle el poco químico que es, digámoslo, ese como el mercurio, entonces ya está contaminado.
Pues el oro siempre lo hace sentir a uno como empoderado, como rico, como que uno se vea pues más bonito, o sea.
Me interné en la selva, pero con otro objetivo. Esto me da risa porque me interné en la selva con el objetivo de volverme guaquero. De hecho, estuve haciendo los huecos inmensos de la tierra. Dicen que los indígenas, que son los dueños de este territorio, en sus tiempos de antes cogían el oro para alabar y para hacer sus ritos religiosos, y que lo guardaban en sitios. Pero si ellos se murieron y que dejaron esos entierros por ahí, dicen que el entierro, si la persona es de buen corazón, no se mueve, pero si tiene mal corazón, él se le va hundiendo dentro de la tierra.
Oro Verde por la Paz es una propuesta de excombatientes de la FAREP en proceso de reincorporación. Lo que hemos hecho es un ejercicio de dar la lucha, de seguir dando la lucha en otro escenario diferente al escenario donde la dábamos antes.
Amarillo rojizo, purpurante oro chocuano, barejero colombiano mata ilusiones. Colombiano mata ilusiones. Gozamos de más confiabilidad, somos más responsables y más temerosas de las cosas indebidas. Eso es una gran ventaja que nos da, porque a mí, como mujer en este medio, me ha dado.
Tengo aquí un escudo del santo Xioma, un santo de allá el plan de las fábulas, que nosotros aquí, los que somos devotos a él, sabemos la divina fe que él tiene y que nosotros tenemos hacia él.
Bueno, ahí hay dos vertientes, un criterio muy personal. La primera vertiente, proteger a la minería artesanal, darles todas las garantías, organizarlos, reconocerlos, identificarlos. Pero nos encontramos con otro problema de hambre y de pobreza. Resulta que la tragan, que hacen el daño ecológico, le dan de comer a la gente rural, porque ahí está la guisa. Hay todo un colectivo que se construye en torno a este trabajo.
Han existido 4 etapas de la minería en el Chocó y prácticamente en el Pacífico. La primera, que era la recolección que hacían los indios en los ríos y quebradas del oro, ellos cuando las crecientes. Aquí tenemos un pueblo, por ejemplo, que se conoce como Playa de Oro. Y se conoce como Playa de Oro porque con las crecientes del río San Juan, cuando secaba, los indios venían a recoger el oro a la orilla del río en esas playas.
Ya, y entonces de todas maneras la minería mecanizada ha permitido que nuestro pueblo también tenga el desarrollo, porque es que nosotros 20, 10 años atrás vivíamos supremamente mal. Aquí vivíamos que la familia prácticamente éramos numerosos y nos tocaba a veces dormir 3, 4 personas en un mismo colchón.
Bancos particulares y mineras, bóveda, señala que no alumbra. Peces surcan como ángeles, nunca regresar.
All right.
Super. Excellent, Camilo. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks so much.
All right. So I think this would be the time for us to understand how Juana's work influenced Camilo's documentary and how that also weaves into Ana Maria's sort of catalytic force of nature that she has. Camilo, any last words regarding the trailer before Juana starts talking to us by any chance?
Well, thanks so much. Yes, I would like to thank Juana and Ana Maria, who have been deeply involved with this project, and they have encouraged me in the most difficult moments of trying to put the story together. So it's thanks to their support that this documentary has seen the light.
Excellent.
Okay.
Perfect. Juana, bienvenida. Nos encantaría saber de todo el contexto of this film. So please go ahead and enlighten us about your work and how this acts as a backdrop of the documentary and all this amazing work to protect this cultural heritage in Chocó, Colombia.
Okay, thank you very much for all of you for being here. I am a jeweler. I've been a jeweler for more than 30 years working on my workbench. And about 10 years ago, I felt that these four walls of my workshop were getting too oppressive. Well, I understand that we are all here because we are jewelers, and we find that the four walls of our workshop are a little bit oppressive, and we want to understand where does the supply chain of our materials come. That's why we are here. I think it's so accurate, this work that Christina Miller and her team does for us, the jewelers. Well, so 10 years ago, as I tell you, I began to feel that I wanted to know a little bit more about other scenarios and other backgrounds of jewelry, especially in Colombia. So I decided to work with Artesanías de Colombia, which is the institution that supports in Colombia handicraft makers. So I went to work there. And working there, I had the incredible and beautiful opportunity of going visit Barbacoas, which is a little town in the middle of the jungles in the South Pacific coast in Colombia. It is a mythical city of gold, of mining, and of slavery since the colony and the republic, since the 17th century. And in this trip, I understood something that I didn't realize when I was working in my workshop. I understood that there was the value of tradition in the craft of jewelry, which until then I didn't see. I understood that in Colombia there is a tradition of jewelry that has been not part of the inspiration of urban jewelry artists as myself. Now this is changing, and I think that my work, Camilo's work, and Ana Maria's work help a lot to make visible this incredible and beautiful tradition, which is now artist jewelers are now approaching to this traditional jewelry. I think that is very important. So in this first trip 10 years ago, this trip filled me with a lot of questions. I discovered that in Colombia persisted a popular ancestral jewelry, which was the result of the way of living in a territory of forests and rivers, and inhabited by the descendants of those enslaved African original from in gold mining. And all these questions arose the interest to know this unique cultural heritage, which is unique in the world. Which were our main findings? We have found that whenever we talk about mining in the Colombian Pacific coast, we must also talk about jewelry. You can't separate the two phenomena, because there is an economic and cultural chain shaped by gold and jewelry, which is very important in the local economy, because jewelry makes up an important economic circuit in the local economy. Remember that the Pacific coast, there's a very low level of banking, so jewelry becomes the materialization of families' economic patrimony. So therefore, the destruction caused by informal and illegal mining also hits jewelry. I think that Camilo work contributes to disseminate these findings. And what can we do to protect this cultural legacy of mining and jewelry, of the mining and jewelry cultural chain? Well, the first way is what we are seeing today here. It is to reveal the difficult situation of artisanal gold mining and jewelry. And also another strategy will be to strengthen the jewelry trade to contribute to reinforce this cultural legacy. That's what Ana Maria has been doing. She has managed to establish a sustainable strategy to expand the demand for the traditional jewelry from the Colombian Pacific coast. So these initiatives, Camilo and Ana Maria will talk more about it, are sure to collaborate with the preservation of this cultural legacy. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Juana. Thank you so much. I just have a quick question regarding the designs of the jewelry in Chocó, Juana. Can you speak to us a little bit about the design characteristics of this jewelry so rich in cultural heritage?
Okay, that's an excellent question, because the jewelry from the Pacific coast, it is a local fashion. It's absolutely local, and I love that. Of course, there are a lot of influences. Of course, you can find influences from Spanish filigrane. Of course, you find it because it's the main technical way of transforming metal. You can find some influences, but what is really beautiful from Pacific coast jewelry in Colombia is that it is a local fashion. How do you say? A fashion which changes very slowly, and this jewelry is absolutely related to the way to the cosmology of people in Chocó, to their beliefs, to their religion. So jewelry is charged with a lot of significance, which are absolutely local, and that's very beautiful.
That's amazing. Awesome. All righty. Maybe to then enrich this conversation while we look at these beautiful pictures, Ana Sierra, Juana was telling us about the challenges of the jewelry making, the gold procurement, and how this all is part of a cadena productiva, a sort of economic circuit in this region in particular. Can you maybe, or Juana, if you want to chime in, talk to us about some of the risks that this entails?
Well, Camilo shows us in his documentary the risk, because now traditional minings have less and less access to gold. And when they don't have gold, jewelers will not have gold in their bench work, because those who ask for jewelry are traditional minings, because their way of saving, their savings are not in the bank. Their savings are jewelry. So if they don't have access to gold, which is more and more difficult, because where people was extracting gold in their artisanal mining system is gone. Gold is finished. So there is a risk. Of course, there is a risk, because there's almost no more gold going in this circuit of economic circuit of gold and jewelry. There is less gold. So jewelry tradition is in risk.
Perfect. Juana, I was looking at the book that we shared with everybody today via the chat. And in the last part of your book, you're talking to us about the recommendations for policy and for things that the nation should do to protect and encourage this livelihood. So can you very briefly sort of touch upon the points that you point out? Because I think they're really important.
Yes, when we had the first version of the book, we went back to Chocó with the photocopy of the first version, and we gave all our contributors the book a few weeks before we went there, and so they can read it and talk a little bit about what do the book make them feel. The first important thing is that this publication of the book and the other catalogs gave consciousness, how do you say? Gave conscience.
Gave visibility.
Gave people the conscience that what they have in hands is a very important cultural patrimony. I think that was our first, first thing we learned. It is that people understood with the publication and seeing their words, because the book is made with the testimony of people. They are talking, nobody else than they are talking. It is, oh, we have here something that it is in risk, and we contribute to that feeling, that consciousness. That's the first thing. The second thing was to take a memoria, recoger una memoria, I don't know how.
To sort of document the history and the legacy.
Yes.
Like the
it is
knowledge.
To document a legacy which was not documented before. That is another value of our work, that people in the Chocó said it was great. The other one was understanding that if ancestral mining finishes this cultural chain of gold and jewelry will be in risk. People talked about the importance of reinforcing artisanal mining. Another conclusion was that it will be important to model new strategies for trading this jewelry. Ana Maria, that's what Ana Maria is doing. She's making real this strategy that people found it was important. That's what I can tell you.
Excellent, Juana, thank you so much. So Ana Maria, perfect segue to you. Go for it.
Hello, how are you? Well, first I have to say that Juana has been an inspiration. I was working in silversmithing and after a whole corporate career, and somebody introduced us. I sat down looking for these more ethical ways of working, and the work she was doing, and she was about to publish her first book and working on the catalogs, and that was a huge inspiration. I didn't know that Afro jewelry before, and I decided that if I had the skills to open markets, that was going to be my cause. And then in the contacts that I had with people like Christina, yourself, Anna, Susan Wheeler, I realized there was this whole market of people who was already interested in having ethical jewelry in their hands. And I realized that was a powerful demand that could help keeping this heritage alive, and mainly bringing back to the Afro communities of women miners and jewelers visibility, dignity, and a little more better ways of living. And so I started to better understand, and I understand when Camilo says, and Camila and Juana, of course, introduced Camilo and ourselves. And I understand when Camilo said it was very difficult to decide when to start editing. And I would say it's not only feeling overwhelmed because of having 60 hours of footage, but also because the devastation you witness is overwhelming. I mean, something similar happened to me, and I realized that the only way to be able to show the world what was happening there, I mean, the region is called biogeographical Chocó, is 2% of the planet surface. It has 10% of biodiversity, and 75 of it is threatened, partly, mainly because of these mechanized gold extraction, illicit gold extraction. I was also overwhelmed. I was like, what do we do with that? I mean, there's this treasure, this heritage, but the negativity around is so much. And then somebody told me, and I think that came out of all the idea of the Black Matter, Black Lives Matters. And I remember this sentence from someone who said, you cannot see what you have not revealed. And then Christina, one day that we were talking, Anna, you show the best of it to the world, because I was like this conversation saying, if I bring jewelry to the world, it might romanticize the whole thing. How can I bring the whole story out? Which also working, not Camilo is very generous, saying that I have supported too much, a little, but I learned so much, and I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show the world that this community. And then came these.
Anna, you're cutting up a little bit. Maybe you could quit the video so the audio gets a little better.
Okay. There? Is it better now?
Yeah, I think so. Keep going. Thanks.
Okay. And so I identify the possibility of creating, like not creating, I'm not creating anything, like putting together the supply chain that starts with the women miners gold, and that gold, which is 0 carbon footprint, goes to the benches of the jewelers. They clean it by hand, is mercury free. It comes from the river to the bench, crime free. They work, but the powerful thing is that I identify jewelry designers, ethical jewelry designers that already have a clientele. They already have people who values all these ethical, intangible assets behind the gold. And we put together, the work we do is to put together the local heritage with its own DNA, that local, very traditional aesthetics with this international DNA that the international jewelers have. And we are helping opening a new market. We're only like the bridge to put these together with a service that is called immersive design. And so you come, we prepare it with a few webinars working together. And in those workshops, the designer, our client, comes out with some sketches of a collection or collaboration. And we prepare a visit to produce the prototypes. And then the designer goes to the fairs and so on, and they do their orders. And the way we work when prototyping is the designer comes and we go together to the region. We go to Tumaco, we go to Quibdó, to all those regions that Juana has identified. She has been really generous. She gave us the names and the contacts and everything. We just do like some sort of production in order to make it really work well. And we end up with amazing collaborations. Like maybe you can show later what we did with Pipa Small last year. And it is possible because Pipa already has this incredible clientele, these people that already values that work. And because there's people like Juana who has worked and identified these people because of the work they do, and because of, fortunately, this unique heritage that's still alive. So what we bring is a new market, which respects the tradition, respects the techniques, and feeds from the work Camilo has done, the work Juana has done, and of course, the amazing work these jewelers and miners do. And with Camilo, we did this nice alliance. He needed to do a couple of more shots, and we needed someone to come with us and register the whole trip. So we did this exchange. He came with us, gave us a whole new perspective of videotaping and photographing. So the jewels travel with all these stories, you see. What you're seeing is Pipa's collection for Colombia. It was produced last year. It's in the market now. And there's two different types of jewels. Jewels that have intellectual property from Pipa Small Limited because she designed them with the techniques. But there's also jewels like the big chain you see there. It's the hero piece of the collection, which are traditional heritage. So it's really nice to discover markets. I mean, that's what we do in creating bridges. That's what we do. And about Camilo's work, I would like to say it's really powerful. He gives voice to, and that's also what Juana does in her book, is to give the space and the voice and the awareness to the locals. It's very respectful of the vision of the locals and those miners and jewelers. And Camilo's documentary is like a polyphony. It's a number of different perspectives and very complex. It's not an easy thing. I also remember Christina saying sometimes don't simplify. That's part of what is powerful from Juana's and Camilo's work. It's not a simple thing. It's really complex. There's a lot of forces. Some are negative, some are highly positive. What you see in jewelry is like the very positive side of it, but there's a lot behind. I mean, the people behind these jewels struggles for living. And hopefully the work Camilo and Juana inspire and the work Pipa does in bringing this to the market allow us to contribute to better livelihoods, you know?
Excellent. Ana Maria, I believe you have a trip coming up.
Yeah, we have in June. One of the strategies we're using in order to be able to keep bringing ethical designers to work with these jewelers, because that's what we do, is to invite them. So in June, from the 16th to the 25th, we are inviting 10 privileged jewelers to come with us. We start with 2 workshops 6 weeks before the trip in order to show the region, the techniques and everything to help inspire them. And we work together on sketches and we prepare the whole visit. First, we start with a visit to the Gold Museum. Then we meet the women miners and they show us how do they pan gold. Then we meet the jewelers. We prepare everything in advance. We have the gold and we can also access artisanal emeralds directly from miners, from Muso, Chivor, and Poscuez. And the first Saturday we're in Bogota and then we fly to Tumaco. This time we're working in Tumaco with around 5 to 7 jewelers, depending on how many people join us. And we develop through the week in a very intensive, immersive experience some of the prototypes of the collection each one of these 10 designers or jewelers have prepared. And in the afternoons, because the jeweler needs space to work, we do different things. We visit the Arts and Crafts School. We receive a workshop on filigree to learn how it is made. You don't learn in one afternoon, but you learn how complex and beautiful it is. We plant some mangroves. Mangroves are the trees that take out of the atmosphere the most CO2. So we try to pay part of the airplane footprint, planting mangroves. And we also get together with the jewelers to learn more about their handcraft and their heritage. They're wonderful people. Part of what Juana and Camilo help you discover is that these people is full of joy and resilience and pride, and their jewelry has all these symbology. When Juana speaks about cosmology, it's amazing what's behind these jewels. So whenever you decide to go and work with them and bring your own DNA and work with their DNA, you discover like jewelry can be a very powerful way of communicating, and these jewelry has embedded all these. There's also protective, protection for part of what this jewelry has inside. These powerful ethical values that are unique to this heritage.
Amazing. That trip sounds like a dream. All righty, we are approaching the end of our session, but I would like to see if Juana and Camilo have anything else to add before we open up the floor to our community and see if anybody wants to volunteer a question or a comment. Juana, Camilo, if you guys want to say anything else?
No. Go on.
Juana.
No. I'm saying that please go on with the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Camilo, ¿tú quieres agregar algo? No, estás mute.
No, I just want to say that the documentary is now in the phase of being sent to national and international film festivals. I am also in the phase of subtitling it into English and French. And then after that, our Alliance for Responsible Mining is interested in having the documentary in a platform, but I believe that won't be happening before 6 months before we know how it went with the festivals. So for the time being, I'm in that phase. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks so much, Cecilia.
Thank you, Camilo. So if anybody has a question, a comment, Christina, Ana as well.
I noted one question from a little earlier in the chat, which was for Camilo, asking what was the biggest surprise when you were working on this? Was there anything that stood out from your experience that surprised you?
Well, my biggest surprise, I would say, is to have found in Chocó very, very open-minded people. These people who live in Chocó are mainly Afro descendants, and we have also indigenous groups in the region, plus people coming from the interior of Colombia. So we have this sort of mixture of people working there in Chocó and helping each other. And what I thought it was beautiful to observe is that there's a lot of how do you say, all these groups work together very well and they respect each other. But at the same time, and I wasn't able to go to the most of the mining sites, which are filled with people who you don't know what's the origin, which groups are they working with, guerrilla groups, paramilitary groups, or narco trafficking groups. So it's very delicate. I went to a couple of places and you feel a bit insecure in this area. So contrasting that aspect of the Chocoan culture, which is so open and generous, and at the same time seeing that all these groups, international groups, also come into the scene, like saying Brazilian dredges owners, or people that owns the retro excavators, which are local or from Medellin or Bogota. So there's a mixture there that you become aware that this is a very hot area in Colombia. So yeah, you can go there, you feel safe, but you don't feel safe if you start to sort of dig a little bit to kind of get to know where this illegal mining gold is coming from. So yeah, I would say that the surprise is that all these people cohabit there, and it's beautiful to see that it is a very loving space for people to visit still.
Excellent, thank you. Also, so go ahead, Christina.
Well, I wanted to jump in because there is a beautiful question from Valerie that has to do with kind of a concern about the ethical line between promoting local indigenous designs and where, this project in particular feels very, very respectful of the of fairly acknowledging the maker's work and the designers and the jewelers and the miners, and sort of a very respectful way of bringing this local and indigenous jewelry to commercial markets. And so so Ana Sierra and Juana, maybe, like, have you thought about this, and how to deal with the complexity of that story in the face of the, when you're trying to educate a consumer about the origins of this jewelry and its rich history and complexities. And we don't want to immediately flag it as being appropriation or something when it's in fact being done in a very respectful way. Could you speak to that a little bit? Maybe starting with Juana.
Juana.
Well, maybe I'm sorry that I'm not prepared to show you some designs I have developed with Chocoan jewelers. I developed them with the Chocoan jewelers from the tradition. And I think it's fine because it means that there are more benefits, economic benefits for jewelers. Maybe these designs I developed with them are not exactly as tradition, but they are a reinterpretation of tradition it is not an appropriation because I'm not selling this jewelry by my own. The jewelry is sold for the benefit of the jewelers that made them, but these are new designs reinterpreting tradition, but according to contemporary markets. I think it's okay, it's excellent because it gives better incomes for jewelers. And these designs, which are simplifications of traditional designs, they are appropriated by the jewelers. Now these designs are them. I think it's great, it's okay. I think it's fine.
Ana, you wanted to add something, Ana Sierra? Ana, you're muted. Maybe she lost connection. Christina, we're at the top of the hour. How would you like us to wrap this up?
Yeah, here I am. Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't find the button. Yeah, that's a very important thing, and you have to address it with a legal framework, literally. So what we did was to find an expert. She studied at La Sorbonne. You know, France is really respectful of tradition and heritage. So, and yes, we have to be very careful. There are some pieces that have been traditional, mainly some chains. And also we have to be very careful that when our clients, those designers, because my clients are both sides, like the jewelers, miners are our clients, but also the international designers. We also have to be very careful of the intellectual property whenever they develop new designs. In jewelry, what we speak is about applied art. That's a way of intellectual property. And so we protect in our contracts the intellectual property of the tradition and its community property. That's how it is called. And so we have to give credit whenever that intellectual property is used to create pieces. And if you check, for example, in Pipa's website, there is credit to the jewelers, and in the video she has, the jewelers are there. We respect them and we treat them as authors of community property. And in the other side, of course, whatever the international designer designs using these techniques is their own intellectual property, and we protect it in the agreements with the jewelers. And it has to be addressed that way. We have to be very careful because, I mean, it's their own tradition. And yes, it is a very, very important issue to address.
Thank you.
I think this is one of those sessions that feels like we really could benefit from a 90-minute long conversation versus a 60-minute long conversation. I know there are more topics that we could cover, but we've come to the end of our session for today. And we hope, in the takeaways, they always take us a few weeks to get out, but you'll receive it. All the links and resources will be there. And going back to Camilo to close, I know that we're all looking forward to seeing the completed film. So once you're past the cycle of those events that you need to keep the film private for, and we have an opportunity to collaborate with the Alliance for Responsible Mining and others to host a public screening for the jewelry community here. We look forward to supporting you in doing that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Juana, Ana, and Camilo, for your time. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks to you. And yes, for sure, I would love to have the documentary screened or put in a platform for you who are also making such an amazing work with ethical mining and jewelry. So I'm sure that the documentary will be accessible for you guys as well. And thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Ciao, thank you very much.
See you
Take good
in May.
care.
Bye all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thanks.